Welcome to Busted Speakers. I'm Cam,
And I'm Alex.
and today we're going to be reviewing Silver Landings, the seventh studio album by American singer and actress Mandy Moore. So, aside from just knowing her as a celebrity and knowing that she voices Rapunzel in Disney's Tangled and the TV show that's come of it, I think it's pretty safe to say that neither of us were overly familiar with Mandy Moore before this review. Correct, Alex?
Yeah, I only knew her as a main actress name from the show This Is Us, pretty much, and that she just existed, but yeah, pretty much not really too familiar with her.
All right, so why don't we kick things off with our impressions from our initial research for this episode? What we thought of her from just checking out stuff on Spotify and maybe any of her acting work that we've seen.
Well, I've still not seen any acting work from her consciously, although I am interested in seeing This Is Us. Musically speaking, it was pretty interesting going into her stuff because a lot of it is quite old now and probably not reflective of who she is now. Teen pop stuff, well, Candy was a top 10 hit in the UK, so I actually already knew that one. And I had heard Moonshadow, which is a cover from Coverage, her covers album. I think it was her fourth album. It was nice going in, just seeing all the stuff she did, progressing from like a teen pop, dance pop artist into a steadily more mature folk pop singer-songwriter musician, especially for her last two albums before this one, Wild Hope and Amanda Lee. Some of the stuff on there was very pleasant, very nice, very sweet and soulful stuff. Definitely seemed in a pretty decent headspace, place of mind there, and happy she was making more mature music than her earliest stuff. So yeah, I was steadily enjoying the stuff I found from researching her past, I guess.
Yeah, I would say the same thing. I started listening to her by shuffling the This Is Mandy Moore playlist on Spotify just because I wanted to get like as much as possible. I didn't want to like just get stuck in the teen pop albums and then not be able to move past that.
Yeah,
And I didn't want to, just listen to the more recent stuff and miss out where she came from. And something that we forgot to mention, this is her seventh album, and it's her first album in 11 years,
that's
which
true.
is,
That's
yeah, it's
crazy.
a shocking amount of time um, for anyone in the music industry these days, but we'll probably get into that in a little bit. Like, the main thing that stood out to me, because, like, I had seen Rapunzel, or Tangled for the first time just toward the end of last year around Thanksgiving, I think.
Yeah.
And like I'm not overly familiar with Mandy Moore and her singing, but just from watching that, I could kind of tell this isn't really what I either like remembered or what I expected her to sound like. And so I was listening to all of those songs from all of those different albums, eras, if you can divide her career into eras. And I just, the thing that struck me the most is that she has a very versatile voice. Would you agree?
Yeah, for sure. I definitely thought that she mainly just had a really mature voice, especially even in the teen pop, dance pop years, which definitely sounded a bit jarring and a bit out of place on some of that, because even when she was only like 18 or something on Coverage, she definitely sounded like beyond her years. But yeah, see what you mean, versatile. Like she could sound kind of sweet and soothing in one voice, but she had quite a bit of power and vocal range too.
I don't even think that she necessarily felt out of place on the teen pop stuff, or at the very least, even if those songs aren't great, it's usually just because it's just because they're trying to sound like whatever Max Martin was doing at the time without having the huge Max Martin choruses. I never thought that she was the weak link in any of her songs.
I'll expand on that further. She had a better voice than was necessary to make
Sure,
those
sure.
songs. Like she was probably over talented. Like she was definitely a better singer than the songs needed.
I couldn't really get a sense of the progression of her career given, the fact that I was shuffling through everything, like except for obviously I could tell the Tangled songs because it's like she's actually like putting on a voice both like speaking and singing for the character that's at least distinct from most of the rest of her songs that I could tell. And I don't know if this is condescending or anything, but like that to me is just like remarkable that it's just not stunt casting. Like she's actually doing a great job as a voice actress, which too many celebrities who go into voice acting can't really pull off that well.
Yeah, it's definitely good that they did that. I can't really comment on Tangled as or what she did there because I've not seen it.
Yeah. So as we said, this is her first album in 11 years since 2009's Amanda Lee, and we were both surprised. I didn't even notice this until you pointed it out, but that one is not on Spotify, and I think you said it's not available on iTunes either.
Yeah, it's a little bit bizarre. I don't know if it's like she was on a different label for a year and that label has got really restrictive leasing out of the music. I heard some of the material on there and it was honestly, aside from this album, Silver Landing, I'd say probably some of her best work. Definitely settled into the folk pop singer-songwriter vein a bit more than even on Wild Hope, which is another pretty good album. 11 years since then, it's not that
Yeah.
she's not been active at all. Obviously, major stuff with her acting career. She's appeared in numerous amount of films in the 2000s, even when she had her career in music on the go. Yeah, so this is almost like trying to demonstrate who she is now musically. Like she could almost have a new musical identity with this release because it's been that much time.
I don't think it's unfair to assume that that's maybe what she's going for, especially since we have to get into this just a little bit. It's also like I don't want to speculate too much, but there's a chance that maybe she doesn't want that album up because maybe it reminds her too much of a bad time in her life. Because
Yeah, maybe.
for anyone who doesn't know, that until a few hours ago included me, she used to be married to Ryan Adams, who
Well, I knew that
has
a while ago. Uh,
yeah, I like it completely passed me by anytime I've looked either of these people up online.
yeah,
Over the years, it has come out that Ryan Adams allegedly is a rather abusive, manipulative kind of person, and he was like co-writing songs with Mandy Moore before they were married and during their marriage. But he would like constantly try to undermine their recording sessions, or he would like say he wanted to record them with her, but then he would bring in other women to sing those songs and belittling her for not playing an instrument and just all this awful stuff on top of every awful thing he was doing to all kinds of other young women in the industry. And whether or not that's related to the gap between the albums and the lack of Amanda Lee's availability, that is definitely an influence on this album, which really feels like Mandy trying to take a full overview of her career up to this point, and like you said, just trying to break off and craft a whole new identity for herself. And I say that this works really well.
yeah, definitely. Yeah, this does feel like a new, fresh version of herself. Definitely reigniting her musical talents because she was definitely a very talented vocalist. I will state that to begin with, and she's still got it. Her voice is still as sweet and soulful. She's got just got a good vocal range. It definitely makes a lot of these songs have a lot more complexities vocally than you may be led to expect if you hadn't heard a lot of her past stuff, especially her earliest stuff. Okay, I'd just say musically, I just think this is a really slick, clean, tight package. 10 songs. On my first listen, I didn't even think there was any weaker songs. I just thought these songs are almost as good as each other. Like, I can't hear any discernible flaw or even weaker element to any of them. They just felt like a really well rounded package. As I listened more and more, a few songs definitely emerged as stellar favourites, and some didn't have as much appeal. But I feel like that's the same with a lot of albums you listen to. There's nothing groundbreaking on here, but you wouldn't expect that. This is just Mandy Moore in 2020 getting her musical identity back. She'd been so intent on releasing new music. It's been so long, and I feel just happy for her that this is out there.
Yeah, and especially happy that it turned out as well as it did for all the work that went into it.
There are some songs on here that could pretty much only be written by her, like the song 15. Well, I thought it was a really solid recollection, although a bit vague, but it is a song trying to
Yeah.
summarize her events of a couple years into a couple minutes. Just reflecting how, she basically didn't have a proper adolescence, almost, not, I don't know if it was forced, but definitely bungled into the music industry. Not she thought she was making music, but she was filling seats. But it's got a sort of semi-positive spin. Like she's no regrets. Everything she did brought her to where she is now. And yeah, I just like that that's a song that is specifically about her past experiences. I thought it was a especially notable personal song to her.
Yeah, that's absolutely fair. Like you're right, it is the kind of song that only she could write because this version of it, like I mean obviously anyone who has been in the industry from a young age could probably relate to it, but it's also, it's like it just helps make it clear that like this is a, personal reflective album for Mandy.
Yeah,
And she brings in like some really talented musicians. Like you were starting to say that like maybe she didn't necessarily write every part of everything, but I noticed on the Wikipedia credits that like there's at least her name and two other names. I assume like two of her musicians that
yeah, her
were.
partner Taylor Goldsmith and
Mhm.
her producer who she had on Amanda Lee, Mike Viola, and someone
Yeah,
else. I can't remember their name right now.
yeah. So like there's at least three credited people, Mandy included, on every song. Which some people say that like pop singers aren't authentic if they don't write everything themselves. And I'm like, screw that, screw you. It's
Yeah,
like having all three of them having writing credits on the whole thing lends kind of a full band experience to the whole album. And that to me is a strength. An even greater strength to this song in particular is the guest vocals and fiddle performed by, of all people, Sarah Watkins of Nickel Creek. I did not see that coming. I have been a huge fan of Nickel Creek since high school and watched the music video on YouTube, and I just saw her in the background. I'm like, is that Sarah Watkins? Awesome.
yeah. So that's definitely a highlight for me. I'd say my absolute favorite song was actually pretty much just the first single, When I Wasn't Watching. This is just a powerhouse for her vocals, like especially into the chorus. I don't know what it is. Like, there's like a strained part of her vocals where she gets a bit lower, but it's also really good. It's like showing vocal depths I didn't really know she could do. Maybe she's developed it a little bit more recently. But yeah, I love the vocals in this song. It's the shortest song on the album, but it's probably the best. Yeah, I love that song.
For me, I think the best song on here is the opener, I'd Rather Lose,
Okay, fair enough.
which you could maybe argue is like a case of best foot forward syndrome, but I just think it's an awesome song. I don't care. Like to me that song felt like I think I said this when we reviewed Way's Blood back in January, so if I ever say this again, you can feel free to shoot me or anything. But it felt like it could have been a lost Fleetwood Mac song, like maybe a little more countryfied, but it just really had that classic 70s feel to it.
I will just say I agree that that song, and not just that song, some other songs here definitely have a West Coast California rock type feeling to them. I believe that's where she's based, and she definitely has players and influences from that area. And yeah, some songs in here definitely remind me of Fleetwood Mac, like that one. I'm totally with you there. The bottom line is this is a good release. So, these songs are incredibly personal to Mandy, but it's hard for us to know whether she's speaking about specific people or just imaginary, theoretical people in terms of making a good song. I can't know that. Cam can't know that. We're just
And like,
presented with the songs as is.
yeah, and I mean, it feels kind of gross to speculate on that kind of thing, but it's like when you're an artist, when you're using your personal life experiences to create your art, especially if there's like any kind of narrative element to it, then you're kind of opening yourself up to, people interpreting it that way, especially if you release your art for public consumption, and especially if you do that as, a celebrity of whatever level Mandy Moore is. Like I don't even know if like the classic A list, B list kind of system still exists anymore, but like whatever tier she is a known name. She
Yeah.
has had, famous things or whatever infamous things happen to her from infamously awful people.
Hmm.
And so like you can't help but wonder that kind of thing, but it also does feel kind of like just gross thinking about that or trying to put too much emphasis on that. So you don't want to get into that territory, but you also can't really help it to a degree.
Yeah, and that is definitely the thought process going into a song like Forgiveness, which is pretty crushing. I mean, it's definitely a song about Forgiveness is, like she says herself, forgiveness feels like a favor. Sorry is just a word. These people, be it specifically her ex-partner or not, if she does forgive them, it doesn't deserve to know like they've done so much bad. That is like it's actually quite a strong mental process to have. Yeah, that song is pretty heavy, right?
Yeah, that absolutely hit home. Like I was hearing that, I was thinking about like all the songs that I've heard with similar themes like that from the last Kesha album, from Paramore's After Laughter.
Yeah, the same song title there,
Yeah,
similar ground covered.
definitely a gut punch when you get to that. It's like
But even with that song, I feel like most of this album is pretty happy and triumphant. Like she is reasserting herself in the music industry, and I feel like for the most part, despite the roads travel to get here, this is a success, I'd say. This album,
absolutely.
even when doing my research before hearing this, it's still quite a bit better than I expected, and I quite enjoy a lot of her past stuff. So I feel like that's saying something. I would say that this is probably her best album as a whole album experience. Like there's no significant flaws to it really. I mean, some of the songs near the end like aren't as immediate as like I'd Rather Lose or Save a Little for Yourself, but they're still quality tracks, I'd say.
If there's like one thing I could give her last couple of albums over this one, is just that
Okay.
I do like a little more extra instruments on folkier stuff.
Hmm.
But at the same time, it feels like she wanted to go for the simplicity of the emotions without a lot of extra clutter. So I can definitely see value in this album being the way it
Her
is.
third album, Mandy Moore, had apparently some Middle Eastern influences. I think I heard that on a few songs like Saturate Me,
Yeah.
kind of interesting. But that was even before she really broke out of the dance pop, just pop sort of bracket. I kind of agree that this sort of kept the same band lineup or instrumental options for each song, aside from like the violin extra in 15 from Sarah.
Mhm.
But for the most part, I'm pretty happy they kept the same band lineup because they did a lot of different musical riffs and chord structures and things just with these instruments. But I won't lie, I did expect like a piano ballad as the last song, as that seems to be the common choice. I've noticed that for about 90% of all albums I hear. Usually piano is on the last song. And they didn't do that, which surprised me.
All right. So, what are you rating this, Alex?
I'm going to give this a solid 7 out of 10. Really impressed with it. Pretty happy with every song. No clear weaknesses, which may think why not a 10 of no clear weaknesses. Obviously, this is nothing groundbreaking, but within the constructs of what I'd expect from a Mandy Moore release, this is definitely at least a triumphant return to form. I'd be happy if she came back to releasing an album every 2 years from now on, or something like that, 3 years, whatever. Yeah, I'm definitely a fan of this album. It's definitely struck the landing with me.
Yep, and I'm also in the 7 range. I think I'm gonna give it a 7.5.
Nice.
It's in the I know I'm in the point 0.5 brigade along with you.
Yep, well, I used to be that way more. Seems to die down a bit with me now.
Yeah, I can't add anything else to everything that we've said. It's a very solid personal album that indicates the beginning of a great new chapter for her music career, and I'm struck by how strong her voice is, how versatile she is, and she has a great taste in co-songwriters and collaborators. And for the love of everything holy, if she ever brings back Sarah Watkins for more, I will absolutely be there. If they tour together, I will
Yeah,
absolutely buy tickets for that. Like,
I would too, but I don't know if they'd actually tour the UK.
I don't know. Well, if she sells enough copies in the UK, then
Well,
maybe.
I've done my bit.
Yep. Okay, so that wraps things up for us. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. You can follow us on Facebook or on Twitter at underscore busted speakers. You can follow me on Twitter at subprospector. You can subscribe if you want to hear more of our album reviews, and we will see you all next time. Bye.
See you guys.